This happened earlier last year and still messes me up thinking about it. For a little backstory, I'm a delivery driver for a certain foods company and have been doing so as a side gig for the past year or so to earn extra money. I'm also female. Anyway, yeah, it's a super chill job. Although the pay is definitely not ideal, especially at night. Normally, any pings I get after 10 p.m. are just crappy fast food orders to customers who are just there, just out of their mind, drunk normally. Anyway, late night deliveries are already profitable through tips, which is why I barely do them. However, on this night last year, find there's a bonus going on. Reach 15 deliveries in a certain time and get an extra 75 bucks. Music to my ears. Well, that's the case. Late night deliveries rock because there's no traffic, and it doesn't matter when you're picking stuff up. The faster you can get them done, the faster you can go home and knock out. Open roads all the way for me. I was on a roll and finished my last McD's run at 2:30 in the morning, cash my bonus and call it a night. For context, this took place in downtown San Diego. Downtown SD has fun restaurants and clubs at the core, but as you branch out, it gets more seedy. Once you get past 16th Street, it gets hella shady. Lots of homeless. The works. I actively try and avoid the area, but in order to get back home and on the freeway, I have to pass through the neighborhood. One more piece of information. I drive a crappy old Ford and nothing's automatic. In order to roll down the window, you have to crank the lever. Because it's a hassle to roll them up and down manually each time, when I do deliveries, I just keep both my windows rolled down because it's easier to pick up / deliver through the windows. This night, I had my windows down as usual. I was planning to roll them up before I passed 16th Street, where the homeless camp was, but didn't get that far. As I turn down a side street heading towards the main drag, up ahead I see a man in one of those orange reflective construction vests standing on the side of the road. There's always some sort of construction going on downtown, and it's pretty common for it to happen at night, so I didn't really pay much attention. As I get closer though, the man stops in the middle of the street waving his arms. I begin slowing down, thinking that he's going to direct traffic or something. I brake to 10, then 5, leaving distance trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do. He breaks out into a jog towards my car, stopping directly in front of it, blocking me and my car from moving forward. God, immediate unease. This is weird. I'm really wishing that my windows were done up. People are talking about fight or flight, and I've always wondered how I'd react in that situation. Now I know, my reaction is to freeze. Because as I was slowing down, it hit me 5 seconds later that I should not have. The guy's not a construction worker. He has on a hard hat and vest, but the creepiest smile I've ever seen in my life. At first I thought he was just smiling to be friendly, but smiling to acknowledge someone longer than a few seconds is not normal. Try it right now, count to 5 in your head while grinning and you'll see what I mean. Exactly what he's doing. Now that he's in front of me, I can tell he's homeless, or I don't know. He's an older guy. I guess 60s, but homelessness has a way of making everyone appear old, so who knows really, but he's just staring at me, wide-eyed smiling, all teeth. Honestly, his smile and mannerisms, the best way I can describe it is Twisty from American Horror film. Literally though, the guy looks insane. I obviously should have reversed, but my brain was panicking, and I didn't think that fast. I was instead frozen in my car thinking, this is how I'm gonna die. This whole time he's not saying a thing, just staring. Then like a ninja, he jumps onto the hood of my car and slams his fist against my hood. I'm frozen in terror just watching this guy. He starts pounding on the hood of my car, crawling around on his hands and knees, not saying anything, just crawling and staring at me. That was the most terrifying part, that he never breaks eye contact once during all of this, and never stops grinning. The thought of my windows being open made me want to throw up, but at the same time, breaking eye contact and moving to roll them up felt scarier. Like if I made any sudden movements or looked away, he'd try and get inside. He never says a word. I think it would have been less scary if he said something, but he didn't. Just pounded his fists on the car and stared. All in reality, this whole time probably lasted seconds, but felt like days. I'm freaking out, and before I can gain the sense to do anything remotely intelligent, I see headlights in my rearview mirror coming up from behind me down the street. The man sees them too, and in an instant he jumps off my car, runs from behind me towards a new car. Jesus, I floor it and don't look back until I'm halfway home on the freeway. At this point it's all adrenaline. For a long time after that I stopped delivering at night. I sure as hell don't want to go down that section of road again anymore. I take the longer route home, and I don't drive with the windows down at night if it's in an even remotely run down area. What I realised from this is how naive I can be, just to go onto autopilot to deal with situations because someone has a uniform. Like, I didn't even question slowing down at first, even though it is a situation that is really sketchy. The opposite actually in my mind. I was confronted and confirmed by the fact that somebody trustworthy was on the road. Suspicious thoughts went by like, oh nice, a public servant doesn't want to make a wrong turn. By the time I stopped, it would have already been too late if the guy decided to attack me, and I shudder thinking about it. I calmed down eventually by reassuring myself that this is probably just a crazy guy on drugs who meant no harm. But it might not have been. The fact that this guy is dressed as a worker on the road, deliberately behaving normal at first, is the part that really scares me. I pray to God I never have a similar experience in my life. I can say though that I learned from this one.
Hello, everyone. This is a long story, but it's one that has bothered me for a very long time. I feel like I need to tell someone about it, just to get it off my mind, but no one around me believes in ghosts, so I can't discuss it without sounding crazy. This is a true story of something that genuinely happened to me a long time ago. I'm currently a 29-year-old guy living on the West Coast, and only recently have I taken an interest in anything paranormal again. I used to be very into the topic of ghosts when I was a kid. However, there was something that happened when I was 17 that scared me so badly I avoided anything paranormal. Until now. It's been 12 years since that day, and only now, after a very decade of no ghost sightings at all, do I feel like I can finally talk about it. When I was 17, I worked for a small business in a very small town of only a few thousand people in the Midwestern US. The business was on the town square, on the second floor of a 2-story brick building that was constructed close to 100 years ago. The bottom floor was a furniture store, and the only way to gain access to the second floor was past a dead-bolted glass door with a thick steel frame, and up a long straight flight of stairs. I taught self-defense classes part-time, which isn't a bad gig when you're a teenager. The head instructor lived over an hour away, so it was up to me to teach one night a week, and occasionally open the place up for the night before anyone arrived for class. Additionally, I was also required to clean the building at least once a week on our days off, which wasn't difficult as I usually only had to run the vacuum and clean the windows and mirrors. Opening the front door required turning the key in a very, very old dead bolt lock, which would occasionally stick and would only open with a very loud clicking sound. One day, I stopped by work on an off day on the weekend with my girlfriend so we could clean the place. Just so no one saw my car parked outside and assumed there was a self-defense class being held that night, I locked the door from the inside by turning the deadbolt and loudly clicking it into place, before walking up the long flight of stairs. Working together, we vacuumed the floors and made quick work of the place. Because we were two hormonally crazed teenagers that rarely had any quiet alone time, of course, we took a moment to get busy on the floor of the front office while we were there. Unprofessionally, I know, but it's not like there was anyone there. The town square was deserted outside since it was the weekend, and all the businesses were closed. Besides, I had made sure the front door was locked, and the only other person with a key to that particular lock was my boss, who wasn't even in the same town. Afterwards, I walked to the bathroom, which was located in the back of the building. On my way back to the front of the building, while I was walking directly in front of the stairs, I heard something. I heard a man's slow, heavy footsteps coming up the long flight of stairs at the front of the building. My first instinct was to turn and run since I was stark raving naked at the time and clearly wasn't expecting visitors. However, the second thought I had was that this was impossible. I had locked the front door myself. It was an old deadlock that barely worked, and besides, I would have heard a loud, resounding click if someone had unlocked the door. Against my better judgment, my burning curiosity had taken a step forward. I had to see what was making the sound. I just had to. If nothing else, simply looking down the empty flight of stairs and seeing nothing would help me understand that I had merely imagined the noise. And that, of course, there was nothing there to make it. However, as I thought all of this, the footsteps continued, and continued to get louder as I walked closer to the noise. Then, I saw it. A solid, substantial shadow was climbing the stairs. This wasn't a shadow in the sense that something was blocking a light source and casting a flat shadow on a flat surface, but it was more of a person. Imagine a shapeless, formless human cloaked in blackness. It had no hair, no facial features, no distinguishing characteristics of any kind. But it was all tall and broad-shouldered. Also, it was walking directly towards me. Its head appeared first, followed by its shoulders and its torso. Then, it was as if it looked up and was surprised to see me. I looked at it exactly where its eyes should have been, and it looked back for less than a fraction of a second, before it jerked backwards, as if startled, and simply vanished, as if it had never existed to begin with. I blinked several times and walked over to the top of the staircase and looked down the stairs, expecting to see someone, somehow playing a trick on me. But there was no one there. Nothing. Just as I had initially expected to see, before seeing the shadow. It was just an empty staircase, just as I thought it would be. After all, I had locked the front door myself, right? Immediately afterwards, I walked back to my girlfriend and we quickly got dressed and left. I didn't mention what I just saw to her, both because I didn't want to scare her and because I didn't think she would believe me. I wrote off the entire incident as something I imagined, a bizarre hallucination. It couldn't possibly have happened. There was no one around outside the building, since all the nearby businesses were closed and no one else had the key. At first I thought perhaps the shadow was simply someone passing by on the sidewalk downstairs, but the light from the front door only reached to the bottom step of the stairs, and it wouldn't explain how the shadow was somehow getting closer to me, as well as somehow climbing the stairs. I never saw the shadow again after that, but it didn't end there. Afterwards, I felt as though someone was watching me every single time I walked into that building. I would have to unlock the place before each class and would have to walk up the long stairway in the pitch darkness. The very same staircase I saw the shadow on, I occasionally heard footsteps after that and felt as if I was being followed. It was almost as if someone was there, someone unseen, who really, really didn't like me. It was as if I was somewhere I wasn't welcome and someone wanted me to leave. Eventually, the feeling got so bad I didn't want to be alone there anymore. I brought my girlfriend with me a second time, and she later complained that she felt like someone was watching her. However, during the day, it felt just like a normal building. The oppressive, creepy feeling started around sunset and only got worse at night. Much, much worse. Around the time I graduated from high school, my boss decided the business was no longer profitable and chose to close the building down. While it royally sucked to lose my only paying job, I was very glad to never have set foot in that place ever again. About a year later, I was in a new relationship and told my new girlfriend what happened at my old job. She was curious, so one night I drove by and parked the car directly in front of the door. It had been quite some time since I was last there, so surely it was safe by now. I immediately felt like I was being watched. Whatever it was, it had never left. It was like someone was standing at the top of the stairs, and it was glaring downwards with such unbelievable hatred and malice. It was unbearable. My girlfriend immediately noticed it as well. She freaked out and demanded that I slam my foot on the gas pedal to get us out of there immediately. Of course, I did. Even to this day, over a decade later, I still don't feel comfortable driving past that building after dark when I fly home to visit my parents. I don't know what I saw there, but it's clearly rooted to that building and either cannot or will not leave.
I work at a retail store, and I detest my job with all my heart. And because I was stupid and said I am always available, they routinely messed me over, putting me on nights. I moan and digress though. I'm okay working nights since I get to see my boyfriend when he picks me up. My boyfriend usually gets off at 10:30, but he doesn't leave until 11, so most nights I'd have to wait. On top of that, he has to make a 10-minute drive, so I potentially have to wait an hour or maybe 40 minutes, but that didn't bother me. He'd call me and tell me he was coming and make sure I'm still alive. Earlier in the week, an Uber driver kept asking me if I was someone named Lenore. I told him no, but he did it again and again, this time asking if I was sure. How am I not sure of my name? Fortunately, my boyfriend pulled in and honked at me, causing the weird Uber driver to speed away. I'm a paranoid penny, so this made me wonder if he'd been watching me and knew my boyfriend always came late. And then I tweaked out that since I kept getting these weird phone calls from some weird telemarketing agency, but when I answered no one is there and they hang up. Is it connected? I don't know. Fast forward 3 days later, and I'm standing here listening to some music waiting for him to pick me up or call. He finally does, and he starts cracking a joke about how he's glad the creepy Uber guy didn't answer. As we start talking and joking, this woman comes up. I don't hear her at first as I have noise cancelling headphones. She gets closer and keeps calling to me yelling hey. I look over at her and smile and then go back to texting. She does it again. I say hi, can I help? Do you need a ride? She says, and she looks. Seems nice enough, but something didn't settle with me. Her car is parked at the stop sign and there's no one else in it. No, my friend is coming to thank you. I notice there's a man in the driver's seat and that she isn't wearing a uniform from either the store or us. She begins to ask again, are you sure? I can give a ride. Do you need one? Get in. Do you need a ride? I begin to feel a little uncomfortable and my preschool doesn't get in a stranger's training kicks in, so I politely decline. I say to my boyfriend, are you close? Just pulled out, I'll get there. Just down the line, is a woman gone? No, she wasn't gone, in fact, she's standing 6 feet away from me. And she looks annoyed. I told him in code that no, she's not left. She has in fact remained there, leaning on the car, just watching me. And she is looking angrier with every passing moment. Out of the corner of my eye, I tell the man tell her something and she looks very annoyed at me. Friend's not here, do you need a ride? Where friend? He probably forgot you. That's okay, we give ride. It's cold, get in, tell us where you live. At this point, she begins getting closer to me. I try to avoid her by moving to the other end of the plaza strip. Honey? So, yeah. What about my sister? Well, she's gotten closer, but I'm pretty scared. She's too far away from here, something might happen. Hurry up so I can tell you. I say in code as a car drives up. Now she looks annoyed. Get in the car now. We give you ride. Get in. At this point, she opens the car and begins trying to get me inside, pulling me, yanking me on my jacket. She's taller, so tries picking me up. At this point, I'm screaming and kicking, wiggling away. Meanwhile, I can hear him yelling at me that he's coming, and now he's called the police. Now my mind is running 1,000 miles an hour, and I'm panicking, thinking that I'm gonna get abducted for this weird husband of hers, since he looks content with her effort to kidnap me. Get in, I'll hit you, she says. I start crying as she manages to get my torso in the car. My right hand is locked on my phone and she begins trying to make it. But my boyfriend is panicking, telling me the police are sending an officer. She shoves my face into the seat. Now my airway is obstructed and she's not letting go. She's bigger than me and stronger and knows it. Her whole weight's on me. I'm trying to not panic so I don't black out from lack of air. Her husband's saying something in Punjabi, and she lifts one hand up and leans down, trying to get something from the front. I immediately use the arms I've been using to push myself off the seat and stabbing her in the stomach. She recoils, letting go of me a little, and I headbutt her torso. I'm really scared, but finally my boyfriend pulls in. I manage to get away, bolt into his car, and the Indian woman is now sitting on the ground. After I shut the door, he speeds off towards her house. When I get in, I break down, babbling about how scared and terrifying it all is, and how if he hadn't come, God knows what would have happened. After this incident, the police officer they dispatched got there more than 20 minutes after and can't find anyone. My boyfriend talks to the boss and he was granted the ability to leave early for me. I'm still weirded out by the car stalling in the plaza. I was also a little upset that my war cry was a line from the King of Hill. I'm just glad I'm safe now.
This happened just yesterday, so it's fresh in my mind. I'm not quite sure what to think of it because it was just so bizarre and unbelievable. So last night at maybe 11 p.m. I was walking around my block. My town is relatively safe, so I didn't feel in danger. Plus, it was a pretty night. I had been walking for around 5 minutes when a pale woman with blonde hair and a white dress caught my eye from across the street. She was about my height and looked to be around my age too. I didn't actually pay attention to her after I first noticed her. While I circled the block again, she was on the same street, a couple of feet in front of me. She was standing on the curb staring at the cars passing by. I said hello to her and she turned and looked at me. I couldn't see her face super well, but from what I think I saw, she had no pupils or color in her eyes. She just stared at me. After a while, I asked if she was okay. She didn't respond again and simply pointed at the road. I was really confused and didn't understand. Right as the red car started coming down the road, she stepped into the road. The car slammed into her, and it was a bloody mess. The driver immediately stopped and jumped out. It was a man in his mid-20s. We both spoke about it, freaking out. He called the police and I went around the car to see the state of the girl. Once I circled around the car, she was gone. Not gone as in dead, gone as in she just wasn't there. The blood on the road was gone too, but not gone from his car. After the police arrived, they concluded that it was some big hoax of a kid who didn't know what they were talking about, and some old guy who went along with it. The blood on the truck was brought in to investigate, only to be found as paint. Nothing else was put up about it. I'm still not sure if what happened was real. It felt so real, but I don't believe in the paranormal. I don't know what it was, if it was just a dream or if it was real. I remember it like it was real. I feel like I can't leave the house now. I don't understand anything now, and I kind of feel like I'm going crazy. Has anyone else experienced something like this?
So this happened about a year ago now, with a girl I used to be friends with in a small town in Ontario, Canada. It's still so insane to me, and I cannot believe it happened. For context, my friend had a laptop that was on its last legs, and we're hoping to have it fixed by a local tech store, so she hailed a taxi to my apartment building, and we agreed to split the $10 it had cost. Once the taxi arrives, the middle-aged man driving immediately sets off alarm bells. He asks us how old we are, if we live alone, why we're heading to the tech store, etc. When my friend tells him about the laptop, he starts to tell us how he fixes computers all the time, and if we go back home with him, he'd buy it off her, and she politely declines. Now please keep in mind that the entire time, he's taking weird back streets, turning around for no reason, and in general trying to extend the ride for as long as he possibly can. At one point, he makes a U-turn in an intersection against 2 rows of incoming traffic. I think we're about to die, Jesus. My friend grows irritated at this point because not only is he driving like a madman, the meters now are a good $20 over the initial 5 ride. She tells him that she'll pay for the original fare and that she's not going to do anything above it. He's clearly trying to get more money out of her. He then reaches up to turn the meter off and insists that we don't have to pay him. And God, I just wish it ended here. We get to the tech store, guess how, and crazy cab driver asks if we want to wait for him to get back. We tell him no and go into the store, and not even 5 minutes later we see him enter staring at us. He parks the cab, then proceeds stalking us throughout the store, whispering behind us about how these employees don't know what they're doing and we should go back with him, etc. At this point we're terrified and make a beeline towards the cash, with him following us the entire time, despite my friend telling him to leave us alone. When we finally get the cash, the guy behind the counter looks at me asking if everything's okay. I wasted no time telling him to call security and that we didn't know this crazy man. As the crazy starts to realize the cashier has alerted security, he screams. Honestly really screaming, and my friend, trying to get closer to her, claiming she owes him $30 for a cab fare, and my friend yells at him that she does not owe him anything. The security guards eventually make their way in between them, forcing him out the door with him still yelling. Now thank God the kindest woman there happened to be in the store, who witnesses the whole event with her 2 sons, and they offer to give us a ride home and punch the cab driver if she sees him again. We're a bit shaky, so we accept the help home. A couple of hours later though, my friend gets a phone call. The driver's gone and filed a criminal complaint against her, alleging that not only had she been alone in the taxi, but she verbally assaulted him, threatening him with a weapon, refusing to pay the fare, which apparently cost $35 now. The officer on the other end informed her of a specific date for her to appear to court to appeal the charges, and that she was banned from hiring from the company again. In the end, he drops the charges. She remained banned from the taxi service for another 8 months, and we never used the company again, and he got off scot-free with his job intact. Crazy, I know.
I am a 25-year-old female. For the purpose of anonymity, I will refer to myself as Sabrina. I'm from Romania. English is not my native language, but I will try to make the story easy to understand. My stories contain what you would call angels, spirits, demons, archangels, satanic people doing forbidden sessions of voodoo, and everything, but for this particular story, I sort of believe this is not necessarily a bad encounter, or so I lie to myself sometimes. There are many stories that I would love to share with you. You can either decide to share them, I don't mind, but mainly I just wish to talk with someone who went through what I did and can understand and empathize with that based on your personal experiences. The one story that I can tell and will share with you for now. I live in Romania. Our country has Orthodox religion, basically very similar to Christianity. We believe in God and Jesus Christ, with small certain similarities and differences. For example, I don't know if it's the same as Catholics do. We keep the deceased for a night. We call it the sleeping duty or guard night. We do not take that body out of its house he or she has lived in for their entire life in order to help the spirit find its way to heaven easier. The next 2 days, as we bury the bodies after 3 days, we take the body to the church where loved ones to the deceased may come and pay respects to that person. After this process has concluded, we bury the body at the cemetery where the priest will chant prayers, helping the spirit of the deceased understand that he or she is no longer among the living. As Romanians are very spiritual people and believe in the afterlife, spirits, and even in the bad spirits that linger the world unable to move on. Understanding this is important as the story is pretty detailed itself. I had 5 grandparents, 3 grandmothers, and 2 grandfathers. My first grandfather, we'll call him Michael, died when I was 6 years old due to a heart attack in August 2007. He raised me, and his death marked my life ever since, because I couldn't grasp the significance of death. I would frequently dream about him. His messages, his signs, I would hear him in my dreams as he would guide me to be a good person and so on. But even then, as a child, I knew what a dream was and what reality was. His wife, whom we'll call Anna, was my adoptive grandmother, as my real by blood grandmother, named Margaret, has died when my mom was 2 years old due to an abortion. During the communist years, 1946 and 1989, Romania had a strict law regarding abortions, and women would abort their fetuses on their own in the privacy of their homes by themselves, as no medics would agree to help with the procedure due to fear of being sentenced to life in prison. She died of septicemia, and my mother grew up without a mother until the age of 6 years old. Needless to say, I never met her or knew anything about Margaret. But this story is about my grandmother, my adoptive one, named Anna. She was a very spiritual, wise, kind-hearted, and intelligent woman. She never had children of her own. She adopted my mom and uncle. My grandfather, Michael, was only dating my grandmother, but after my mother had met her on a family visit on her side in Moldova, they got married soon after. My grandfather was a military general, and raising 2 children of 6 years and 13 years was hard. How they decided to get married? Well, it was thanks to my mother, because as soon as she first saw my grandma, Anna, she went straight to her at the age of 6, raised both her arms up at her, and asked her in a jolly voice, "Hi, my name is Christina. Would you like to be my mommy?" My grandmother burst in tears, picked her up, and immediately created a connection with my mother, whom she raised and loved as her own. It was not the same for my uncle, as he was 13 at the time and knew his own mother, Margaret, had died and why. He denounced her and made her life very, very difficult. After raising my mom and uncle, my uncle had 2 children of his own, a boy and a girl. She raised the girl, and when the boy was born, she had a calcium crisis that made her faint and hit her head. She refused to raise my cousin afterwards, as she was afraid she would drop holding the baby. My uncle never forgave her for that and hated her even more. When I was born, I was the light of their life, as she loved my mother from the moment, and my grandfather Michael adored my mother. Because I am a replica of my mother, same eyes, same face, same body shape, they immediately took me in and raised me, as my father worked in 3 different jobs, and my mom was a paramedic nurse and worked night shifts. I loved growing up with her. Like I said, she was an extremely spiritual person. She loved to meditate. She would tell me about her dreams. She taught me how to decode them and what it meant. She told me about ghost encounters she had in her life, and always told me not to fear any spirit that comes close to me in my life, because ghosts see us as beams of light guiding them to God when they are confused. Yes, that was my grandmother Anna for you. She did this until I was 18 years old. We were very close, and I was living 5 minutes away from her, so I would visit her daily, sometimes still sleep at her place. Her hobby was to read the future in some cards she had owned. Not tarot cards, but normal cards with some inscriptions she had, such as Encounter with a Mysterious Man, Beware Crying Child, Be Careful of the Dangerous Woman. On the New Year morning of 2017 at 3:15 a.m., I called my Grandma Ann to wish her a Happy New Year and to let her know how much I and my family loved her and appreciated her. I'd like to mention that Romanians rarely express their love by saying I love you to our mothers, fathers, grandparents. We consider that you show your love by what you do in your life and how you respect them rather than just say the words. But that night, for the first time in 23 years, I felt that I needed to tell her that. I still don't know why. Her voice changed. You could hear her chuckle in the soft, happy tears as she would hear that. And she said she loves us all back and forever will. Nothing seemed suspicious, as I am a very sensitive and emotional woman myself, so the night went on normally. She was at a party, I was at my fiance's house. The next day, I received a phone call from my father who told me that Grandma Ann had died the previous night. I couldn't express in words how my heart simply left my body, as if my own existence stopped, refusing to acknowledge that she was dead. I rushed home. The police were there, the ambulance was there. They say she died of a heart attack due to the climate change. Same as my grandfather Michael did 11 years before, by the same cause. It was a cold night outside, and inside the house was too hot, and as she was rushing to change her clothes, her heart couldn't handle the temperature change. Her body couldn't balance the heat, and she died. But what I find particularly weird is the time of death. I still had her last phone call, 3:15 a.m. The policemen and ambulance staff analyzed her and declared the time of death was around midnight. They said there was no way I could have talked to her at 3:15 a.m., as for by that time the body would have already began the rigor mortis stage. Who did I talk to? Because it was her phone number, it was her voice, and she seemed incredibly fine. Call it a sick joke or just medical staff time of death error? It's just creepy. During her funeral, I decided to write her a goodbye letter, as I am very spiritual, and even though no one will read it, I like to consider she took the message I had for her in heaven to pass it down to my other grandmother, Margaret, and 2 grandfathers, Michael and Peter. I wrote in that letter that I do love her a lot, and that I thank her for every sacrifice she has done for me, and that I wish to tell Margaret that I love her too, although I never met her. I put the letter in my grandmother's coffin, kissed her forehead, and watched her go on her last road. After her funeral, I got a phone call from my grandmother, Anna. At first I thought it was my father, as he would still use her phone to let our relatives from other countries know that she died. So normally, I answer the phone, and I hear something unimaginable. I hear my Anna. I hear her voice, but with static and interference occurring. Whenever she would pause, it was a soft, fading voice, but nothing scary, nothing fearful or intimidating. It made me feel like she was indeed there, but I will admit the whole situation did freak me out. She said to me, "Hello, dear. I called you to let you know I passed the message. I love you too." I couldn't reply as the phone call hung up after. It left me feeling so vulnerable as I thought maybe someone is playing a sick joke. But it couldn't be that. I saw my grandma buried myself. I saw the coffin sealed. I saw the letter exist inside the coffin until the very last second. No one took it out to read it. She had 3 sisters, but they were all dead and none of them had her voice. No one could have repeated her voice that perfectly. But the even scarier part comes after the first phone call. After another week, my phone starts ringing again under the same number. I answer, already have forgotten about what has happened, and I hear an old lady, a voice I didn't recognize. I did not know who the lady was. It was a pretty soft but strong voice. It felt like a relatively young woman, but I would say around 30 or 40 years old. I would like to mention that this time I was in the same room with my father, and I received the call. Her phone is in front of me on the table and not ringing. I open her phone as I speak on my phone. Her phone had no battery, but still, I got her phone call. I answer. I hear this weird lady, and she says, "Hello, sweetheart. You don't know me, but I do. I received your message, and I love you too." Then the phone call hangs up again. Needless to say, I started screaming and panicking so hard that my dad immediately went to the telephone service to find out who was playing pranks on us. They went through her profile, numbers dialed and received. My number was not in her agenda of calls, so we decided to disable her number. Ever since then, we do not receive calls anymore, but I do go to the cemetery more often and talk to them. This year is the first year from her death, so we are sort of celebrating her memory. But for me, personally, I do not celebrate her memory as I feel she is constantly physically with me. I often have dreams of her. She would often visit me at nights. I guess I'm trying to thank you for giving me the possibility to share this with you. If you want to share my story further to all the people out there who encounter ghosts or paranormal activity, I'm going to. I'm going to say what my grandmother Anne taught me all my life. Do not be afraid of them, as they are just confused, lost souls who see you as a beam of light helping them to find God. The way you feel about them will conclude in the way they react. Hey everybody, thank you all for watching. And again, sorry for the AC in the background and everything. I know that's probably annoying. Anyways, I'd like to give a big thank you to Insomniak. Thank you for collaborating with me on my channel. I'm sorry this video took forever to get out, man. But thank you for also having a section of my last video. Please, just thank you all. Thank you all so much for all the kind words and all the support and everything. I almost felt kind of bad because it has the same little open world tropes to it. But anyways, I'm having a blast playing Neo, and I hope you guys are having a great day. And I'll see you guys in the next video. I love you all, and just remember, the best ideas always come out of nightmares.